In this tiny warehouse in Northern California, Dusty Kenny is getting her products ready to sell on Amazon.
We make baby spoons, baby placemats, bento boxes, bowls, plates, cups, and we manufacture them in China, and they come via sea in all these boxes here.
But now Kenny is facing a giant additional cost, a 125% tariff on all her goods coming from China.
We have tens of thousands of products here in this warehouse. And when you add a tariff to all of that, and you're trying to absorb that for your customer to not raise prices on them, that adds up to an astronomical amount.
On April 2nd, Trump announced big, aggressive tariffs, a 10% baseline on nearly all imports to the U.S. and far steeper rates on many nations.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them.
This is my livelihood. This is how we put food on the table. It could put me out of business.
Stocks tumbled amid fears of reciprocal tariffs, rising prices, and slowing consumer spend. Although Trump did put a 90-day pause on tariffs for some countries on April 9th,
prices will go up in the short term. There's no doubt about it.
CNBC sat down with 8 U.S. businesses who sell on Amazon to find out how the new tariffs are having an impact on their prices, their competitors in China, and their customers' willingness to spend. Tariffs have been around since America's early days. But since the creation of the federal income tax in 1913, they've become a smaller and smaller portion of federal revenue, with some notable moments of tariff increases along the way. By the 2010s, the average tariff was just 1% to 3%. Then Trump sent tariffs soaring during his first term, taxing steel and aluminum from U.S. allies, threatening tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and launching a trade war with China. Sound familiar?
Brands come to us panicked about tariffs. We started talking to our clients about recommending getting out of China a long time ago when the first round of tariffs came up. And then Biden became president. We said, Biden's not going to remove it.
Sure enough, most of Trump's first-term tariffs continued under Biden. And now Trump's back. He started with a 10% tariff on most Chinese goods in February. China retaliated with an added 15% tariff on some U.S. imports. Trump raised the China tariff to 20% on March 4th. That's also when whopping new 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada went into effect.
I was in a state of shock, and it was very sudden. We have to stop everything. We cannot afford selling goods anymore.
Portable Winch Co. has been making its car winches in Canada for more than 20 years and simply driving them an hour to the U.S. border for duty-free shipping to American customers, until now.
The U.S. is a growing market for us. It represents like 22% of our sales. We are questioning ourselves if we just move our focus to Europe. Is it really a negotiation tactic? Maybe. I hope so. I sincerely hope so.
Then on April 2nd, Trump made his biggest move yet, reciprocal tariffs on 180 countries, with an average rate the highest it's been since the Great Depression. There's a blanket 10% tariff on nearly all imports, 20% on the European Union, and big tariffs in Asia, 32% on Taiwan, 46% on Vietnam, 49% on Cambodia, although Trump did put a pause on tariffs for some countries on April 9th. But in the biggest blow for many Amazon sellers, Trump doubled down on China tariffs, raising them to a humongous 125%, following China's own retaliatory tariff of 84% on U.S. goods. Estimates show some 60 to 70% of goods on Amazon come from China. Although most products on Amazon are sold by third parties, tariffs will also impact its own brands like Amazon Basics.
They're trying to win by saying we have a similar feature set to the national battery at a lower price. And so if they have to raise that price, consumers are likely to have a preference for that well-known, familiar brand.
So will Amazon increase prices on its own brands, passing the new tariff cost on to consumers?
The last thing they want to do is right away just pass it to the consumer, because you don't know how transitory this is. I think if it extends after, call it 6 months, then a lot of those ultimately get passed to the consumer.
As for whether third-party sellers will need to raise prices,
I will hold my prices for as long as I can and just absorb those tariffs, because I'm already competing against those Chinese sellers that are undercutting me.
On Amazon, yeah, we'll probably increase the price by, 10 to 20% at some point.
Tariffs are going to increase the price of toys for the consumer. There's no doubt about it.
While tariffs on China are nothing new, it's unusual for them to hit certain types of goods, like toys.
I mean, it's real steel. This is a real steel, really tangible toy. This toy retails for $29.99. This will end up costing $5 to $10 more as these tariffs fully pass through.
Jay Foreman runs Florida-based Basic Fun. With $200 million in annual sales, its well-known labels sell on Amazon and at retailers like Walmart and Target.
Tonka trucks, Care Bears, Lincoln Logs, Tinker Toys, Light Bright. And as with most of the toy business, we make the overwhelming majority of our product in China. China, has a tremendous workforce, and not only a tremendous workforce, but they've invested in the infrastructure to create a toy manufacturing supply chain.
Because of China tariffs during Trump's first term, Foreman says a lot of toy manufacturing has moved to Vietnam, Mexico, and India in the last 5 years.
The interesting part there is that most of the factories that operate in places, toy factories anyway, that operate in places like Vietnam, India, and Mexico are owned by Chinese anyway. So you're sort of not escaping doing business with the Chinese.
It's been crazy. Sometimes we find information because we get an invoice or we see the customs entry document. And we're like, well, what? What do we charge? What do we charge again?
John Covey owns St. Louis-based Jeniece Games. He does the majority of his yearly $2 million in sales on Amazon and makes his science-based board games in China.
The actual machinery to manufacture at the quality that we need primarily exists in China, and we have not seen samples that will compare to the same level of quality.
And toys are just one category among many that rely on China for manufacturing and assembly due to lower costs and established infrastructure.
This is one of the most amazing pieces of technology, and this thing is made in China. And whether you're making a Tonka truck in China or an Apple iPhone, they figured it out.
Almost all electronics that U.S. consumers like to buy are fabricated in China. The vast majority of textiles are milled in China, whether the apparel is actually put together in China or not.
Other categories, like teas, can't easily be grown in the U.S. because of the climate.
You need high humidity. Usually you need to be at a very high altitude, and those things only come together in certain parts of the world. Like the green teas that we use are only really grown in coastal China. The black teas are grown in India.
Baltimore-based Zest makes high caffeine teas. About half of its $3 to $4 million of annual sales happen on Amazon.
It's those components that are the most troubling. Of you don't really have a U.S. option, and just you have to pass on the cost eventually.
This is our new Snacktainer silicone bento box.
Kenny's brand, Prima Stella, brings in about $800,000 annually, almost entirely from Amazon sales.
I would love to be able to manufacture in the U.S., but the truth is that the infrastructure is not there. The manufacturing infrastructure doesn't exist. I've even considered what it would look like to open a manufacturing site, but that's way over my head and, out of my budget, right?
Even with huge tariffs, Kenny says it still doesn't make financial sense to move manufacturing to the U.S.
The cost is too high. It's not 10% or 20% higher. It's double or triple the cost per product. Right now, when you do try to reach out to manufacturers that are here, they don't even return your calls or your emails. The people in China are hungry for the work. They'll get back to you right away. They make sure you get your shipments right away. They're on it.
There are some, like Viper Industrial, that do manufacture entirely in the U.S. and charge a premium for it.
We actually see as a competitive advantage. You put our products side by side to a competitor's that is getting it overseas, and it's a night and day difference.
Dane Rush and his brother own the Green Bay-based business, selling some $30 million annually of stools and other shop equipment that range in cost from $350 to $650.
You can go to, a lower value store and buy a stool at $40 or $50, maybe even cheaper. We're not going for the buyer that's looking for the cheapest price. That's not our market.
Now he's considering taking on manufacturing for others who rely on countries hit hardest by the tariffs.
At the National Hardware Show, we actually got asked by many vendors if we could be an OEM for them. So I think there's a huge opportunity for OEM manufacturers to start taking on more work from these people that were purchasing overseas and start making it here in the United States.
This may be true for some categories, but not for any of the other Amazon sellers we spoke to. Instead, they've been looking to move manufacturing elsewhere overseas.
During the first presidency of Trump, we noticed that the tariff was going to impact our industry, especially with furniture being hit. So at that point, we set up our first joint venture factory in Vietnam.
William Su runs a $70 million New York-based home and kids brand called Teamson, founded by his mom, now sold at Costco and Amazon.
And then also I've visited India twice already within that last 6 months.
But Trump announced a 26% tariff on India and 46% on Vietnam April 2nd, although tariffs are on pause for some countries. But the huge China tariff remains.
So within the next 12 to 16 months, we will completely move out of China.
None of the sellers we talked to say it's financially feasible to relocate manufacturing to the U.S., even though it would allow them to avoid tariffs.
I think the administration would like people to think that this is a China problem and that this is only hurting Chinese-based businesses and helping U.S.-based businesses. But I am a U.S.-based business, let's be clear. I can't manufacture everything here. I wish that I could, but everything else is done here. Everything's warehoused here, designed here, photographed here. All the income that comes from that stays here.
All those costs of doing business in the U.S. add up quickly.
And those costs are different than they are, say, in China. And so when you have the factory directly knocking off a product and sending it right to Amazon and not paying tariffs, we can't compete.
Like so many others, Kenny needs to keep prices low to stay competitive in the era of Temu and Shein.
My most popular product are my silicone baby spoons, and I used to sell them for $9.99. And now I sell them for $7.99 because so many knockoffs have come in and sell them for even $5.50. I've seen them on sites like Temu for even $3 or $4.
Until now, absurdly low prices on sites like Temu, Alibaba, and Shein were possible largely because of a loophole called de minimis that allows orders under $800 to skirt by without paying duties and taxes. Chinese sellers send individual or small orders directly to U.S. customers to keep shipments under the limit. But sellers like Kenny want to quality check their goods, not send them straight from the factory in China.
We bring them in large quantities in pallet loads, and so we're paying full tariffs for them.
Trump briefly put de minimis on hold in February. Days later, as huge numbers of Chinese packages started piling up at U.S. post offices and customs officials got overwhelmed, he temporarily reinstated the loophole.
We don't have enough customs inspectors to look at this huge volume of packages, and the U.S. Post Office does not collect duties. They don't have a single employee dedicated to inspecting packages or processing duties. So literally there was a stop to all international mail from China for a few days.
On April 2nd, citing adequate systems now in place to collect tariffs, Trump again announced he's ending de minimis, effective May 2nd. The White House said the loophole is being closed to target deceptive Chinese-based sellers who hide illicit substances, including synthetic opioids, in low-value packages to exploit the de minimis exemption.
This particular toy, when we manufacture it, we're inspected by our licensor Hasbro, it's inspected by our retailer, Target, Walmart, and China. Anything that comes in on de minimis is not going through that safety scrutiny at all. Small packets that might have included a dress or some kind of tchotchke might have been stuffed with illegal drugs or things like that, might be counterfeit, might be bootlegs and knockoffs.
Some Amazon sellers were benefiting from de minimis, especially on its separate direct from China site, Amazon Haul, launched in November to compete with Temu. But overall, killing de minimis will hurt Amazon competitors like Temu more.
Closing this actually takes off, what's really been the sort of loophole that's been tugging at Amazon, really for the last 18 months.
With Trump's shifting stance on de minimis and broader tariffs, the uncertainty has made it difficult for businesses and American shoppers to plan.
You never know from day to day. Are we going to have new tariffs? Are we not? Is he going to raise them? Are they going to be blocked? How do you plan like that?
We actually see a slowdown in purchases in some cases just from the talk of tariffs and the talk that prices might go up.
Another uncertainty, just how many countries will implement retaliatory tariffs and how big they'll get. which will hurt some U.S. Amazon sellers in the opposite direction.
You may have liked it when your made in the USA auto products are price advantage versus imported ones, but then when you want to export those auto products to Canada, you may suddenly not like it. So uncertainty is really bad for business, regardless of who wins or loses on any specific tariff.
It's been so unreliable so far. It's this number, it's that number, it stops, it goes. It's hard to know where will this stop.